I'm just going to go over some of this ride that we've had over the past 40 years regarding technology, but from a little bit of a personal point of view, and look at our relationships with technology. So, that's me, 1981. We've got a Commodore VIC-20 down here. Any Commodore VIC-20 users? Yeah, two. You know, I was your average kid at that kind of time. I used to go out and play with my friends. I rang on their doorbell. I said, "Can they come out to play?" And they usually said no. Yeah, just enjoyed life, and it was great. But this kind of stuff down here, computers, started alluring me rather than going outside to stay inside and work out what this thing did and how it worked. So previously to that, obviously computers were around. They didn't look like that. They looked a little bit like this. They weren't entirely engaging. You can see them. Yeah, not entirely engaged person there. So, they were huge. They filled entire rooms. It cost a fortune. And computers at that time, industry, films and the media kind of portraying computers as these things that would take over our lives in a very sci-fi type of way. And obviously the reality was a bit different. So this was kind of tech we had in our homes in the 70s. Wood effect rules. Tech was trying to fit into your... some of it drill wood. Yeah, no, it was all fabric. We were trying to be green, we didn't want to use so much wood, certainly can't do fabric. But at least it fit in with the sidewalk. But technology was there, it was chunky, it was big, it was unwanted in some ways, it was necessary. But this kind of stuff, you know, your hi-fi was expensive, game console, you know, they were relatively expensive, and I'll cover the price in a minute. But that was the kind of thing that looked like. And it's hard to believe that that was tech. You know, this was the height of sophistication in regards to tech at that time. And me as a kid, this is what I was playing with. Simon and Astro Wars. These were my games at that time. And at that time, if you think back, I mean, I say to my kids, you know, go to your room. You know, if there's an argument, I can't deal with it, go to your room. And that's what my parents told me to do. Jason, go to your room. And he did that because it was a punishment. Because in your bedroom, you had some books. We had some books. And that was it. Really, not much, and it was a punishment. Now, if I say to my kids, go to your room, oh, brilliant. I don't have to say to you down here. They've got everything they want. Computers, games consoles, all sorts of things. So things have changed in that respect. And I did a documentary with the BBC called Electric Dreams about how the family relationship has changed over the 70s, 80s and 90s to see how the dynamics changed within that household over those 30 years. And technology has in some ways pulled the family apart. It's allowed us to go our separate ways within the house. But these days it's now starting to come back a little bit, and I don't know about you, but you know, my family spends quite a lot of time in the living room again now. It's just that we're all on our phones, tweeting or talking to our friends separately, not to each other, about whatever we're watching. So kind of a strange thing turning around, coming back together again, but also equally further apart. I run a computer museum. It would be illegal for me not to have a BBC Micro and Spectrum in the slide somewhere. But this was the kind of stuff that we were dealing with back in the 80s, and they weren't the most user-friendly of machines. Only those that had the time to spend working out what the abbreviations meant and learning how to code on these things really got to grips with it. In the most part, that was kids. But the manuals for these things had the instructions about how to connect up something to the user port or whatever. You had a full circuit diagram in the back of some of these things. Things that you just kind of find crazy if you got well, assuming your iPhone had a manual with it, to have the circuit diagram in the back, you mind blow. But that's what happened with these. And that meant people were inquisitive. So what is this circuit diagram? What does it do? Why am I showing this? Why do I need to program this? Because it was more software. But at the end of the day, that kind of just opened the door for people. Yeah? Kids looked at this stuff and they are naturally inquisitive. And me, as one of them, learned how to code, I learned electronics, because of machines like this. So 1984 comes along, and Apple sort of tried to show us why 1984 wasn't going to be like George Orwell's 1984. And they were right, because they didn't have some sales guy trying to flog you a £7,000 machine at that time in the book. It was expensive. Okay, this might have been where things changed a bit. Our relationship changed because computers become easier to use, but they were still expensive. And you know, £2,500 in 1984. In today's money, that's the equivalent of about 7.5 or 7.3 then. So these were expensive, and not very many people could afford them. But they were getting simpler. If you could point, you could use the computer, apparently. And it's true. So computers were starting to become something more that everyday people could use, and Apple actively went after that market. Over in the UK, we had something else. We had Amstrad. We had that barrel boy that came along and made computers cheaper and affordable. Two machines here, great machines, that were down in price. They weren't up in the thousands that these on the Apple Macintosh was. These were down to an affordable price, although actually looking at it, there's still over £1,000 worth of computer in today's money. So the cost was still quite high. But they sold in their masses. People could use them for word processing. Again, it was about simplicity. The machine over here just did word processing. So people could feel it was only a little bit of a step up from a typewriter. And the PC here was out there to undercut the IBM PC, which was much more expensive. But again, it was simplifying things and making them more sort of approachable. Amstrad did, if nothing else, sort of consumerise computing. It made it something much more of a hi-fi kind of device that didn't scare off a lot of people. It sounds crazy to say now, but back then, that's the way. So, portability comes into play and changed our relationship. As things become portable, we can put them in our pockets. They would become much more personal to us. And things like this, I mean, mobile phones, it's hard to think that mobile phones were like that, and it actually wasn't that long ago. You've got the Sony Walkman there. Now, obviously, the Sony Walkman had existed way before, back in '79. But it was quite expensive. And at this time, prices were tumbling, and all of a sudden kids were getting these things as Christmas presents or whatever, and walking around with their headphones on completely sort of separated off from the rest of society. So with things getting smaller, the personal side of things come along, and also the price, and the more people could afford them, so they were starting to take over more and more of our lives. And then here, I can't really talk about portability without talking about the laptop, and how the relationship there and the line between work and pleasure sort of started to blur. Lots of people coming to the museum, maybe donating the machine or just having a look around, talking about their first laptop, which was quite often a company laptop, and they were kind of given it so you could kind of work at home as well. This is a bargain. And that kind of time, 5 o'clock, started not necessarily to be the end of work because you could take something home with you. But then equally, computers, it's a two-way street, because now, you know, how many people's lunchtime gets extended by 10 minutes just looking at a couple of cats falling off bins and things. So, you know, this has changed the way that our work lives are now. Everybody has this kind of strange working hours. And I've been surprised, maybe I shouldn't be, when I email somebody at 11 o'clock at night because I'm thinking something through and I get a response back. Oh, didn't think you'd be up, you know, this is business. But, you know, that's the way it works. You've got there the phone, which is just there to show that you've got this kind of modern laptop there, but the phones are still looking quite old at that time. There was all still wired phones all over the place. And things like, you know, these digital watches that store data in regulation that last for 5 minutes. So, into the early 90s, and the World Wide Web, although actually most of us kind of missed it, we didn't really see, for the majority of us, the World Wide Web starting up, got the first website up there. Instead, you know, some of us, if we could afford them, our phones were getting slightly smaller now, and maybe more of us were carrying those around now. But the Game Boy had come along, and we was all playing Tetris on the bus or wherever, and ignoring everybody else around us just to make sure we got that last brick in place. But digital cameras, it's early 90s, but digital cameras are only just about coming around, and we've got a quick take there, which really does sort of lead on to the big part of the story in a bit. But it was incredibly basic. You know, really, really low quality images, and only sort of half a dozen of that. Then, computers kind of changed a few things in terms of industries. And this is quite strange because home computers, they've got 2 home computers here, started to revolutionise and also start new industries. So the Atari ST up there with Cubase, piece of music software. A little bit of an analogy really with what I was talking about before, with people not really wanting to get to grips with the detail of coding or electronics and wanting to know what a transistor was. Music is kind of a similar thing. Computers allow people to create music that beforehand couldn't create music. Because, well, this is a good thing or not, I'll leave that to you. But at the end of the day, with music, it opened it up to a whole new bunch of people that could just hit a few keys and then use the computer to make it right, or at least right in their ears. So, music industry was transformed by computers, and not only that, they're home computers essentially. So the Atari there was very, very good with the music side of it, and the Amiga, its big competitor at the time, was very, very good with graphics. So we had lots and lots of video production companies pop up that could video you in with snazzy titles and things like that. So these 2 machines that, although were supposed to be personal home computers, did change industries. So in the mid-90s, you can't really do this without going through the web. And it existed, but at this point, we had a reason to go with it. eBay come along, and a site set up and designed to sell you things you really don't need. I take the mick out of it, but actually, without eBay, probably the museum wouldn't exist, so I have to take that back. Things like IMDb, settling thousands of arguments in the living room about who was in that film, which, as it turns out, I was mostly always wrong. And then we've got things like sort of Amnesty International. Nothing really to say about that, but it's interesting that was one of the first websites out there. Before Yahoo and Alta Vista, Amnesty International had their site up. Just forward-looking, interesting. So the internet started playing its part in all this, but we were just browsers. We didn't really play a part in that internet, we were just people looking at it. This was the kind of tech we was using in the 90s. TVs were still those big old glass chunky things everybody's trying to get rid of now. And then late 90s, Google come along. Where are they now? This is kind of important. So we've got the Nokia phone there that could have access to the internet on your phone. Now again, it sounds kind of normal to say now, but having the internet on your phone was a new thing to say, and a big, big deal. So businesses were going out and buying these phones to be able to send emails and this sort of thing on a phone like that. Quite a big chunky thing still. This flips up there. The rest of us had to make do with phones like this and just play Snake. And then sort of early 2000s, and MySpace. So anybody remember that? Was anybody ever on it? Yeah, you were. So this was tech-savvy teens. Can I call them that? Were you that? I don't know. Using the internet, and we weren't just now browsing the internet, we were actually making it. We were putting stuff on there that we wanted to have on there. And it was pretty well placed. And it didn't last forever. Obviously it's now one of the where are they now of the internet, but an important time because it made it that we were now playing a part in the internet. Wikipedia, things like that, and again we've been able to look at this kind of information. So now our relationship with these devices is starting to become one of need, because having things like Wikipedia and all these other websites accessible to you in your pocket, the world of information at your fingertips. Great. So things like that were a big turnaround. LCD screens were just starting to come in at this sort of time. They weren't the sexiest little screens, but they were there. And now PCs were still these big chunky things to sell on desks. And the iPod came around in the early 2000s as well. So, not only has technology changed the world of music creation, but it's also changed the way that music is delivered. Absolutely massive changes to that industry from tech. So as we go on, obviously Facebook and Twitter appeared, and now this is big time us creating content for the internet. And because of these two things, camera phones and sort of visual video cameras that you could just upload straight from the phone or the camera to the internet. So now we were not only we weren't browsers, we were publishers. We were the people, we were broadcasters, we were the people creating this content. And obviously still are today. And so much of the information that we get is from these kind of sites. And news stories are breaking because of other individuals that are out there posting on those sort of mediums. So our sort of relationship now with technology through the internet is one of communication, obviously. And it's changing the way that we sort of are and we live our lives as people. We've already talked about the Internet of Things and smart fridges, smart TVs, smart phones, blah, 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 and how we've got Raspberry Pi out there, which is being used to make some of this sort of stuff happen, especially for those people, the Fred in the sheds, I call it Ted in the shed, yeah, that are making these things happen. But kids are using these things, and at the museum we're actively promoting kids getting involved with electronics. Although we are doing the transistors as well, and they do love transistors. But at any level, just to get them in there and bring back some of this sort of inquisitiveness as to actually what makes these things tick. It's really, really important. You don't have to teach them every single thing about it. Just open the door. Just say, actually, there's more to this than just being that screen on your wall or whatever. So, I mentioned I went out and I went and played with my friends as a kid and I rang their doorbells. Kids don't ring doorbells anymore. Kids get out their mobile phones and they text up to a satellite, which then goes down to a server farm, which then goes up to another satellite, and then across to their friend, my son's phone, and says, I'm outside. And then he goes out, I'm going out there. And that was it. Doorbell never rung. And they stand at the bottom of the pavement, they don't want to talk to me. Scary dad. So they use this incredibly expensive and amazing technology to replace a bit of bell wire and a switch and a bell. It's kind of great, and if you think about that and as kind of metaphor for how kids' lives are changed because of technology, actually, it's really hard to do to look at it from their point of view, but when kids go into the museum and they talk about all this sort of stuff, it's really, really interesting. And they live quite differently in ways that you wouldn't believe. And because of the technology that they've got around them. The internet is normalising us. So this is necessarily, I'm not making any judgment either way on this. But you're a product of your surroundings. You know, the people around you influence maybe the way you speak or the way you think or whatever. But because the internet is around us all the time, I don't mean this on a local level, I mean on a global scale. And in some ways this is great because it gives people a better understanding of other cultures, of other things that are going on around the world, or whatever. But it is having an impact, a personal impact on every single one of us, and especially kids. And having all this information at their fingertips. So it's quite an interesting thing to talk about and to think about. Because we didn't have this. We were kind of isolated. As much as we had all our friends around us, there was still that little gang of people, maybe in that village or that town or whatever. But you know, they are living in this global village thing. And the internet is having that effect. Not just the internet, all sorts of communication. So, just to finish off, this what we're doing at the museum. I was saying that we're talking to kids and getting information about from them about how they use technology and what they want to do with it and that kind of thing. This is an event that we did with Cows and Arm, getting kids involved in using, and it's really quite inspiring to get from them how they see things. They see things very, very differently because we grew up with it and we kind of have an understanding of how it's got to where it is now, but they've come in now and just it's all around them and they just use it like we used to watch the telly. And that's the thing, they don't watch the telly, they watch YouTube. You know, my kids don't understand why we have to sit down in front of the telly and watch whatever TV says we're going to watch. That's stupid. So, you know, TV, we've always thought for a long time that maybe TV's days are numbered. Maybe so. But the ideas behind it, you should have to think that they were born into this, so their views are very, very different. So, yeah, that's probably about it. So, thank you for your time.